Thank you for joining us today. My name is Katherine Crowley, CFILC's AT Access Coordinator, and I'd like to welcome you to the Ability Tools newest installment in a series of webinars outlining the activities established by the AT Act. Today, we'll be providing an overview of the activity reutilization. Last month, we discussed the activity information and assistance because it was the natural next step when thinking about how consumers seek out individually tailored information after they become informed that there are services available to them through public awareness events or otherwise. Using that trajectory of thought, we're continuing along with the experience of the consumer, which could bring them to many possible activities as a next step, because once the consumer has been successfully informed of their available options through an information and assistance activity, there are a good deal of services they might wish to utilize. One of the many next steps could be participating in a reutilization activity. Our training objective for today will be to clarify the particulars of the activity reutilization as it is defined by the AT Act. This is with the intention of facilitating more frequent and effective execution of reutilization activities under the AT Act, and also facilitating more comprehensive and accurate reporting of reutilization activities under the AT Act. Although the AT Act does not include a formal definition of the activity device reutilization, the Act describes reutilization programs as programs that provide for the exchange, repair, recycling, or other reutilization of assistive technology devices, which may include redistribution through device sales, loans, rentals, or donations carried out either directly or in collaboration with public or private entities. Device reuse programs can be great solutions for individuals with disabilities who need items public sources will not pay for, including backup devices, who need a device that's no longer manufactured, or who have an acute need for a device while they pursue or wait for funding. Additionally, you've likely heard the terms reutilization and reuse used throughout your work. These terms are synonymous and can correctly be used interchangeably as they describe the same activity. You might be asking yourself, is this activity a required activity for me to perform? If you're operating with AT Act funding, then yes, reutilization activities are required activities. Reutilization activities exist within the state level category, and all activities within this category are designed with the intention of facilitating a consumer's acquisition to assistive technology. It's required by the federal government that state level activities take up about 60% of the AT Act funding received by the state, with the remaining 40% going to state leadership activities. So there is an expectation and built-in support for reutilization activity implementation. Reutilization is the activity where you are facilitating the acquisition of used or new devices for free or low cost. Community members reach out with a device need, and you respond to that need in a variety of ways. This can manifest in the form of connecting consumers to each other, so consumers hoping to donate or sell devices can connect with consumers in need of their device. This can be executed through a one-ad style listing, like the AT Exchange, or this could also be performed by staff who keep a list of individuals with large devices like medical beds or lift assist chairs and connect the people on the list with donors as donors become available. Reuse activities also include the practice of sanitizing, refurbishing, or repairing, and redistributing donated devices. This occurs when centers physically accept a donation, clean and sanitize the device, perform any necessary refurbishments or repairs, and make them available to their community members as needed, or even making the repairs on donated items as items are requested, like using the Keep the Wheels Rolling Repair Fund to repair a previously donated wheelchair for a consumer in need of that type of chair. Another form of repair reuse activities are instances where centers perform device repairs, where a device is repaired for an individual, enabling the consumer to retain ownership of their device rather than needing to purchase a replacement device. Centers can perform open-ended loans of retired loan inventory. An example of this could be getting an older iPad out of your loan inventory and adding it to your reuse inventory because you're getting a newer model in. The device still works, but it's outdated. It isn't something you want to keep in your loan inventory, but as it could still be useful to someone, you're able to offer it out as a reuse item to a consumer in need. Another type of open-ended loan would be distributing devices purchased with non-AT Act funding, like some centers did when they purchased additional Chromebooks over the summer to help combat social isolation. They were new items that were distributed but weren't expected to come back, and were therefore considered open-ended loans. If you're engaging in AT maker activities, where a finished product is made, fabricated, and provided to a consumer to meet an AT need, you're doing an acquisition activity. This is because the AT providing the device at no cost or just charging for materials is a way for the consumer to acquire the device. An activity under the AT Act which commonly becomes confused with reutilization activities is information and assistance. How these activities are distinct from one another are that reutilization activities consist of staff referring consumers to other consumers to acquire a device versus information and assistance activities where staff refer consumers to vendors or programs. Another identifying trait of a device exchange reutilization activity is that the staff is assisting in the acquisition of a specific device, as opposed to an information and assistance activity where staff are assisting a consumer in providing access to a type of device. And finally, centers sometimes maintain an inventory of available items, whether this be a literal inventory, which is moderated through the state AT program, like the AT Exchange, or a list of items available, which interacts with a list of consumers interested in the items of this type. This is different from information and assistance activities where staff do not maintain an inventory of items available, as they're not privy to the inventories of the vendors and programs they're referring their consumers to. So they're referring to services which can optimally provide rather than referring to a specific device. Information and assistance activities can again be conflated with reutilization in the instance of repair activities. This makes sense, as we discussed in the previous information and assistance training. Most instances of performing a repair on a device that a consumer brings in should be considered an information and assistance activity. In order to determine if your repair should be reported as an information and assistance activity or a reutilization activity, you should look at two specific elements. First, if your repair is intended to make a fully broken device work again, you are performing a reutilization activity. This is in contrast to an information and assistance repair, in which you're intending to improve the functionality of an otherwise working device. To look further, a repair considered a reutilization activity prevents a device from going into a landfill, versus a repair which would be considered an information and assistance activity where a device is not in danger of going into a landfill. Now, this conflation right here is understandably confusing because it has loan right in the name. So you would think that it's a loan activity. But because it's a permanent form of acquisition rather than an access activity to let the consumer try it out, it falls under reuse. So the best way to determine which activity you're performing is to look at the loan length. If you're performing a reutilization activity of an open-ended device loan, if the device provided has an unlimited loan length, then it is a reutilization activity. This is versus a short-term device loan, which has a definite limited loan end date. This is not to say that a device loan becomes an open-ended loan when it surpasses the initially established length of the loan, as staff will sometimes extend loans to accommodate the needs of the consumer. But even in these instances, there is an agreed-upon return date, and the device is expected back at that time. An open-ended loan does not establish such an end date. Also, open-ended loans do not typically expect a return of the item, simply advising that the item come back if the consumer no longer finds they need the device, in order to get the item back out to another consumer in another open-ended loan. That is in stark contrast to a device loan where staff fully expect and depend on the return of their loan device. With an open-ended loan, it is not necessary to inventory devices, as you'll see later in the NETAD's reutilization walkthrough. If you're able to add a device into the activity at the activity page, You're able to do this without needing to pull from an established inventory. This is in contrast to a device loan where centers need to keep a tight inventory of their devices in order to record all the activities associated with them and to help safeguard against loss of devices. An activity which includes an AT maker device should be considered a reutilization activity if a piece of AT is a general device, not custom fit to the consumer. This is distinct from an AT maker device that has been made as a custom device for the consumer, which should be reported under state financing. Additionally, if the device is provided to the consumer with the understanding that the device should be returned to the program when it's no longer needed, this activity should be considered a reutilization activity. This contrasts with a state financing activity where, due to its custom-fitted nature, made AT devices acquired by the consumer cannot be used by other consumers and is therefore, there's no expectation nor need for a return. DOR has determined that the AT Act and AT advocates will be supported under the same roof as ILCs, which is very unique, as California is the only state which does this. California AT advocates and the Hub, Ability Tools, perform state leadership activities, and Ability Tools as the Hub performs and contracts out the performance of state-level activities, as is the case with California's Device Lending and Demonstration Centers, or DLDCs. As we continue further into the series, we're going to discuss all of the other state-level activities in much greater detail. Today, we're going to discuss the first one. One of our requirements as the Hub is to collect, organize, and report all state leadership and level activity data to the federal government. In order for us to count all of the hard work that you guys do, it needs to be individually reported by the centers performing the activities. National Assistive Technology Act Data System, or NATADS, is the web-based aggregate data reporting system used by state AT programs to submit the required data elements of the APR as mandated by the AT Act. NATAD's primary purpose is to serve as the official APR data collection mechanism. However, NATADS has a web-based DaytoDay data collection system that can be optionally used by state AT programs for collecting and managing data reporting for all activities included in the state plan for AT and required by the annual progress report. As a result of this day-to-day reporting option being available as a central reporting system capable of ensuring the validation of all of California's data, California's Assistive Technology Advisory Council and the Department of Rehabilitation made the decision that California would utilize NATADS for collecting the data relevant to our state's AT Act activities. Upon your reminder email this morning, you should have received 2 Word documents. One was titled NATADS Activity Guide, Reutilization Inventory Entry, and NATADS Activity Guide, Reutilization Activity Entry. I am now going to do a live walkthrough of the steps you'll go through to enter your reutilization activities. So we're going to go ahead and start with the inventory entry, because if a lot of the activities that you're going to perform are dependent on you having some inventory in the system to begin with. So that seems like a natural starting point. So there are a few different methods of managing your reutilization inventory in NATADS, depending on the type of reutilization item and your center-specific needs. If you're adding a newly donated item to your reutilization inventory, you will, in most instances, enter the item into your reuse inventory. If you're adding an item which will go out as an open-ended loan that you expect to possibly be turned back at some point in order to be loaned out again as another open-ended loan, you will in most instances enter the item into your main inventory. If you're retiring an item from your main inventory, you'll transfer the item from your main inventory to your reuse inventory. Or your center might not inventory their donations at all, in which case you can manually enter each item upon performing the actual reutilization activity. In which case, you can learn how to accomplish this by following the instructions in the NATADS Activity Guide Reutilization Activity Entry, which we'll go over after we complete the inventory entry. So to start, you're going to want to go ahead and log into NATADS. You're going to be using your work email as your username and your password of choice. If you can't recall which password you chose, you can always reach out to me and I can help you retrieve your password, or you can click on the I forgot my password icon at the login page. So on the next screen, you're going to select DaytoDay New, and then under the DaytoDay application Under the banner State Level Functions, you're going to select Reutilization. On the next screen, Reutilization Home, under the banner titled Reuse Inventory Functions, select the button Add Reuse Item. On the next screen, titled Reuse Item Entry, under the banner titled Reuse Item Information, enter the following information. You're going to enter your center into the region area, the listing type, so you can select the type of listing which best matches your item. So let's say you have a wheelchair that you're going to be doing a repair on with the Keep the Wheels Rolling Fund, then you'll go ahead and select Refurbish, Repair, Reassign. If you have one of those Chromebooks that we were discussing, then you would go ahead and select Long-Term Loan. You're going to enter the item name, the item number. In this space, you can put in any internal inventory system your center is using. You're going to select the inventory category. You have a whole selection of categories that are typical to our inventory items. And there's a subcategory function, but there aren't any subcategories assigned at this time. You're going to select the appropriate location of where your item is going to be physically stored. And you're going to enter the manufacturer name, the model name, and if there's a serial number, you'll add in the serial number also. A note about serial numbers. If the item doesn't have a serial number, feel free to skip this field. If you notice it's after serial number, it doesn't have an asterisk, so it's not a required field. If it does have a serial number, take a moment to be sure that this item belongs in the reuse inventory. There are many instances of an item with a serial number belonging in the reuse inventory, i.e. retiring a tablet from your main inventory and adding it to reuse to find a new permanent owner. But many times if the item's newer and expensive enough to warrant a serial number, this item may be better placed in the main inventory where it can be utilized as an open-ended loan that could potentially come back and be loaned again out to a consumer in need. Under retail costs, you're going to enter the MSRP of the item into this field. And under the listing price, enter the price the consumer is being asked to pay in this field. Most times it's going to be $0 unless the item donor asked for a form of compensation. Next, you're going to select status from the drop-down menu. You're going to typically start this out as available, and then it can be altered depending or removed as the item is further interacted with. You're going to make sure that the active box is checked so that it's active on the site, and you're going to not check the box next to highlight this item on the web. Under the description banner, you can enter a brief description of the item that you're entering. If you have an item that you are entering in mass that came from an outside source, like I know that we have some members of DDAR who are entering lanterns into the system, then we are going to be able to just use the description that was provided by whoever gave you the item, in this case, Lisa, and you can just copy and paste it in there. But in other instances where you're just entering one of your own items, you can just put a brief description of what you feel accurately describes the item. Under the image banner, select the button that says Select, and a window will appear providing access to your computer's files. Select the file of the image you wish to attach. Under the Added By banner, ensure that the name tags generated the correct phone number and email address that will serve as the contact information associated with this item. If not, edit as needed. Under the Administrative Notes banner, enter any administrative notes that are relevant to this item, i.e. the item is missing a charging cable. Select the Save button to complete entry into your NATADS reuse inventory. To add multiple items of the same type into the NATADS reuse inventory, once your item has been entered into your center's NATADS reuse inventory, you'll be navigated to that item's reuse information page. I'm going to go ahead and throw up the guide for a moment so that you can see what that looks like. So You're going to be adding these items into the it's going to be added to your reuse inventory page, and it's going to navigate you to the item inventory page. And from this page, you can perform a variety of functions. You can modify, copy, delete, remove, place on hold, move to reuse, or back to list. And in this instance, if you're going to be adding in more than one device, again, back to those lanterns, if you're adding in dozens of these devices, the easiest way to go about adding in multiple of the same item is to hit the copy button that is underneath the view inventory banner of the inventory information page. The copy button is going to enable you to be taken to a new item inventory screen, and it's going to have all of the information that you just entered already filled into that space. All of the region, the inventory categories, the inventory names are going to be auto-filled, except with the exception of your serial numbers and the images. Those you will have to enter in new. After you've entered in the specific serial number, if applicable, and the image, then you can go ahead and select save. And once you select save, you can rinse and repeat and do that for as many times as you need to be able to enter all the items that you need to put into NATADS. Sorry about that. So if you're going to be working with open-ended loans, as I said before, you're more than likely going to want to be putting this inventory in your main inventory. It makes it so that's accessible from any space that you're looking to add it in. We'll get into that when we look at adding an activity onto NATADS, a reuse activity. So if you're going to be adding an item to your main inventory, it's a very similar process. It asks a few different questions, but it's very similar. So you're going to go to your DaytoDay application page and go under the section titled Client and Inventory Functions and select Inventory. Under Inventory Functions, click on the button that says Add Inventory Item. And you'll notice the page is very similar to the reuse inventory. It asks a couple of different questions, but it's mostly the same. It's going to ask different questions like what the purchase date was. It's going to ask questions about how much the cost paid was, because these are questions that wouldn't be relevant to reuse items that were donated, because you wouldn't know what the purchase date was or what the donor paid for the item. You're going to, for the purposes of having it be an open-ended loan, you're going to check the box for device loan, check the box for reuse, and you're going to check the box for active, and you're going to check the box, and you're not going to check any other boxes past that point. Moving down the page, you're going to see a text box with a description banner. You can enter a brief description of the item you're entering, and under the accessories banner, and list any accessories associated with the item that you're entering. Under the image banner, select the select button, and a window will appear to provide access to your computer's files, and you can select the file of the image that you wish to attach. You can select the checkbox set image as a default image for items of this type in order to make the copy function a lot easier if you are entering more items than one of this device. Once you're done with that, you're going to hit the save button, and it will be the same process if you want to add multiple items of the same type as it was for the reuse inventory. You'll just hit the copy button, and again, you're just going to have to enter in the new serial number and reattach the image, rinse and repeat. So if you're using an item from your main inventory to perform an open-ended loan, you can always select items from your main inventory, as detailed in this guide, what we just discussed. However, if you wish to retire an item from your main inventory and perform a device refurbish, repair, reassign activity, you have to transfer the item from that inventory into your NATADS reuse inventory. So in order to do that, you're going to now navigate to your inventory functions. So go to your DaytoDay homepage, go to Client Inventory Functions, and select Inventory. You can go to View Inventory. I have to apologize. NATADS isn't wanting to cooperate with us today. There we go. And from there, you can type in an item that you're looking for. You want to transfer over into your reuse inventory. You don't have need for it for your device loans. Hyperlink of the item that you're looking for. I'm sorry, guys. I don't know why this isn't wanting to function. The aren't wanting to work for us. All right. Sorry about that. The entire Chrome browser just froze up there, guys. All right. So what you're going to do is you're going to go into your inventory item. And once you get to the inventory item page where you have the inventory information, you're going to see that there is a button that you can choose that says Move to Reuse. It's going to be at the top of the page over the inventory information banner that says Modify, Copy, Delete, Remove, Place on Hold, Move to Reuse, and Back to List. Click on Move to Reuse. And once you click on it, you're going to get a notification that's going to pop up that says, are you sure you want to move this item to reuse for RRR? Go ahead and click on OK, and it will move your item over to reuse, and you'll be able to give it out to a consumer as a reuse item, and it'll clear it out of your inventory. So let's see if we can get Chrome working again so that we can go through the activity entry. All right, I have hope. All right, guys. So what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and log in and select DaytoDay. And then from your DaytoDay application page, you're going to go down to the state level functions banner. And from there, you're going to click on the Reutilization button. From that point, you're going to go to the Add Reutilization Activity button under the Reutilization Functions banner. So from here, you're going to see that it's very similar to a lot of the other forms that you filled out. It's going to have the date and user section, clients related to reutilization section, and we're just going to go ahead and walk through the process of filling this out because there are a couple of different ways it can be filled out because reuse is a very vast and broad topic. So what you're going to start with is making sure that your reutilization date is accurate to when the date occurred. I know sometimes we perform the activities one day and don't get to the entry until maybe the end of the week. So make sure that you have the proper date on there. Make sure that you're using your login to enter your information into NATADS. That way it accurately reports who's putting the information in. And you're going to select your reutilization type. You have three options. The first one is going to be device exchange. You're going to select device exchange if this option is a situation where you're facilitating a consumer in need of a device connect with a consumer donating or selling a device. Your second option is device refurbish, repair, reassign. This option is if devices are taken in, sanitized, refurbished, repaired as needed, and then offered out to consumers. And open-ended. This option is if you're either providing a device to a consumer for as long as it's required to meet their needs, or if you're reassigning the device to them on a permanent basis. So once you've chosen your activity, you're going to see a slight change potentially in the page. With the device exchange, your page, everything's going to look the same except for these buttons that are just above the device related to reutilization banner. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit so that you guys can see it better. If you select device, refurbish, repair, reassign, those buttons stay the same. You still have enter device info and select reuse inventory. What changes is if you choose open-ended loan. And this is why we added our open-ended loan items into our main inventory, because it gives us more flexibility. And so if you select open-ended loan, you have device info, reuse inventory, and main inventory as options to pull the inventory into your activity. So you're going to go ahead and add a client. Under client related to reutilization, hit the button that says add change client. Do a search for my favorite client. Hit the search button, and the client should pop up and as a hyperlink for their name. Select the hyperlink, and it's going to immediately add them to your activity. From here, you're going to select the device that you're getting to this consumer. So let's say you are doing a device exchange. And this is an item that people have brought in numerous rollators, and you didn't want to inventory all of those rollators. So you're going to, instead of pulling from an inventory, you're going to just hit enter device info, select add device underneath device related to reutilization. And from there, you're going to have a form pop up where you can just manually enter in the information related to your device. So let's say it was a rollator. You're going to select mobility, seating, and positioning. Description, type in rollator. Number of devices, type in however many you're giving out, typically one. Device estimated retail cost, just a quick Google search will give you a general idea of how much this would cost on the market. And the device consumer cost, usually going to be 0, but if there were a larger item that the donor wanted some sort of compensation on, you could arrange that also. You're going to hit add to add that reutilization item to the activity, and it will add them into it without having to pull from any inventory. So that's really good for those of you who don't want to maintain a specific inventory on NATADS, but you have a closet where you keep these donated items. Let's say you're doing a device refurbish, repair, reassign. You can select the, that reutilization type, and you are doing a wheelchair that you have refurbished with Keep the Wheels Rolling Fund. And you had a power chair that was in your inventory and broken, but now that the consumer came in, you have set them up with a proper wheelchair, you've done your repairs, and now you're ready to give it out to them. You can select the item out of your reuse inventory. And underneath reuse inventory reutilized, you're going to see a button that says add reuse item. And from there, you're going to be able to search by any of the search fields that you'd like. You can do it by the item ID, the item name, or the serial number. Anything that makes the most sense to you and is easiest. Once you've selected the search by function, go ahead and type in the parameters that you're going to search by into the field that's beneath the search by function. You can hit override reuse type if you are looking to look for all items that are in your reuse inventory. Because right now it's going to be looking for items that are just device, refurbish, repair, reassign. If you notice, when we added items to our inventory, we were able to select the item type. And you could have checked from numerous different options. One of them was the device refurbish, repair, reassign. If you took it in that way, then it's going to go ahead and pop up here. But if you took it in as a donation or anything else, it won't pop up here unless you select override reuse type. And then it's going to show anything that's available in your reuse library. It's a really handy function. You're going to select search, and when your item pops up, it will have a hyperlinked name. You select the hyperlinked name, and it will go ahead and add itself to your activity. Now, let's say you want to perform an open-ended loan. You have a Chromebook you want to get out to somebody who is experiencing social isolation. You're going to go ahead and select from your main inventory. You're going to hit the select main inventory button above the reuse inventory reutilized banner. And then underneath that banner, you can select the button that says add reuse item. Oh, sorry, that says add inventory. NATAD isn't wanting to keep up with us. Once you select that button, You can select an item. You can search by the inventory name, the ID, the model, the serial number. I mean, you might just have an idea of when you purchased a bulk amount of these items and you know the date. And so you can do the search by that even. And then as you fill in the field underneath what you selected, do your search. And your item is going to go ahead and pop up with the name hyperlinked. Select the hyperlink and it will automatically generate into your activity form. So you can see there are 3 different specific ways of performing a reutilization activity entry all in the same form. Once you've done all of that work, then it's very simple. You're just going to do your performance measure, decision, and satisfaction information portion. There's an activity excluded from performance measure box. You can select that if you brought a bunch of small reuse items, like a bunch of magnifiers to an expo, and you were giving them out to consumers as needed. You wouldn't be able to get those performance measures from those consumers, so it would be excluded from the performance measure. Sometimes there are instances that have to do with emergency situations where you're getting items out to people, but you don't have to do a full intake for obvious reasons. You would select activity excluded from performance measure. Most of the time we need performance measures. I believe that we have to have at least 70% of the performance measures accounted for, but there are times where you just aren't able to get those measures, and that's okay. Under primary area of AT use, from the drop-down menu, you're going to select whether it's for employment, education, or community living. Under reason for using AT program, you have a variety of options. If the consumer could only afford the AT through statewide AT program, the AT is only available through the statewide AT program. Other programs are too complex or too long of a wait, or if none of the above, or if non-respondent. Sometimes people just don't give you an answer. Under the satisfaction measure, this is very important. They're going to select their degree of satisfaction. A lot of times I'll see that people put a degree of satisfaction based on how satisfied they were with the device. That is not what we're trying to measure here. We're trying to measure how satisfied they were with your performance with executing this reuse activity. And so make sure that they're measuring the activity, not the device. Underneath these performance measures, you'll see a banner that says anecdote. You can provide an anecdotal story to this activity. It's optional if you have a good one. You know, it's nice to have it in there. We can pull it up for the APR at the end of the year, but it is optional. You have up to 10,000 character count for that. And underneath that, you also have the anecdote image banner, and you can, just like all the other image options that we had in the past, you can just hit the select button and it'll navigate you to a form where you can select an item, an image from your computer to attach to your activity. This also has a great option to be able to add alt text so that your images are more accessible. Once you're done with that, you can hit the save button and you'll be able to finish adding in your reutilization activity. And I think that that's about it, actually, for NATADS. NATADS don't want to cooperate with us, but we got through. All right, guys, let's move along to a Q&A and discussion. Does anybody have any questions? Do they need anything clarified? Any concerns? I know that reuse can be a little confusing. There's a lot of different elements to it. So if you have any questions, feel free to shoot them out here. We'd also like to know how you perform reutilization activities. What do you do leading up to the activity, during the activity, following the activity? Any special considerations considering COVID?
Katherine, this is Megan. We have a couple questions that are in the Q&A box. I'll go ahead and start reading those. And please feel free to send us questions in the Q&A, or you can raise your hand on Zoom if that is more accessible for you. So our first question here says, do we have to have an initial password and individual account issued to us to access NATADS?
Thank you. That's a good question. Yes, you do. But it's very easy to get one. Just give me a call or email me. My email is Katherine@cfilc.org. So that's KATHRINE @CFILC.org. ReutilC.org. And I'm sure, Megan, would you be able to put that in the chat for them, please?
Yes, it's in the chat.
Thank you. And so just reach out to me and I'd be happy to set you up with your credentials. And if you have any other questions, I'd be happy to walk you through any other things that you need to ask.
And piggybacking on that, Katherine, should center staff use their coworkers' login or should everybody have a unique login?
It would be best for everyone to have a unique login. That way it's good for everybody involved. It helps validate the data. It helps it so that if somebody is using your information and putting in erroneous information, it doesn't fall back on you. And you also want to be able to be contacted if something, I go through and I look through all of these activities for the entire state. And sometimes there's questions. And so it ensures that I'm reaching out to the correct people to be able to get the information that we need to have a more complete report for our state.
Perfect. Thanks, Katherine. Our next question here says, can you please explain if there's a difference between long-term loans and open-ended loans?
Oh, I know. I'm so sorry about that. That is one of those terms, just like reutilization and reuse, that they are interchangeable and they are frequently interchanged. I'm sure I did that a ton throughout this entire presentation. They mean the same thing. They're just different terms for the same activity.
Perfect. So open-ended loan and long-term loan mean the same thing. So our next question here comes from the Central Valley, and Izzy wants to know, do the lanterns for the DaytoDay program, are they entered as an open-ended loan for reutilization?
As far as I know, the lanterns are going to be entered in as a refurbished repair item. It's going to be handed out to people. It's going to be here. I was going to pull up the screen, but NATADS has not been cooperating with us. So we're just going to have to go audio here. Yeah, we're going to be entering those in as a reassigned refurbished repair situation. Open-ended loans are, you're expecting things to really potentially come back and be able to be sent out to another person. These are most likely just going to be going straight out and you're not going to see them again. So it would make most sense to put them out as just a straight reassign.
Perfect. And our next question here, Marisol wants to know if items such as tablets and computers, they were purchased with COVID relief funds, can those be counted as reuse?
Well, I mean, it would depend on how they were given out. If they were given out as items to combat social isolation, you don't expect them to come back to you, and it's an open-ended loan, then yeah, that is going to count as reuse. And it doesn't matter exactly where the funding is coming from, as long as it's an activity that's happening in the state. Because that's what they're measuring, are the activities that are occurring in the state.
Perfect. And if you have more clarification you need, Marisol, please send it to us. So Katherine, what is the Keep the Wheels Rolling Fund and how do people qualify for it?
Oh, Keep the Wheels Rolling Fund is a great fund. It's a fund where you can take a wheelchair that has come in on donation and it needs repairs. Let's say it needs a battery. Let's say it needs a replacement joystick. You can apply to get those repairs funded up to $450 through the Keep the Wheels Rolling Repair Fund. And so you're going to go to abilitytools.org to be able to put in an application. You can look on, there's a specific page for Keep the Wheels Rolling. Let me go ahead and pull it up. Let's see if it'll cooperate with us. So if you go to abilitytools.org, you're going to go to the Services tab across the top and go to the Keep the Wheels Rolling Repair Fund. And it's going to navigate you to a page where you can get all of the information in relation to the fund. So you can see if the repair that you're wanting to do qualifies. It's a great fund. You can do up to one a month, and it will provide a grant up to $450 to do repairs for the chair. If it needs to have more than $450, you'll have to come up with the rest of the funding through other center funds. but I mean, $450 is definitely nothing to turn your nose up at. So you're going to go ahead and fill out the application here, and it'll get sent on to me, and we'll look it over, make sure that it qualifies. And all you have to do past that point is send in invoices. I'll send you an invoice template that you can fill out with the receipts, and it needs to be posted to NATADS for the refurbish activity, the refurbish, repair, reassign activity. And send me the NATADS ID to be sure that it got into NATADS, and you can send it out to your consumer. You just need to make sure to get all of your repairs done within 30 days. And if it's going to take longer than that, because sometimes it does, just be sure to reach out to us as soon as you can, and we can get you an extension on the time required. But it's a great program.
Great. Thanks, Katherine. And I went ahead and put that link in the chat as well for folks. Nikki is asking, if an inventory item is being moved to reuse, do we need to submit an ad removal form for that item?
Yes, you do. Because that item, if you're an operating DLDC and you're working with these items that are purchased with DLDC funding, then we're going to be working under the assumption that the item is still in your DLDC and out for loan, available for loan. And so whether or not it's staying in NATADS or not, it's no longer going to be available for loan. So it needs to have that item removal request form turned in before you actually remove it from your inventory.
Great. And where can they get that form, Katherine, if they need it?
Again, reach out to me. I'd be happy to send it out to you guys. Any emails you send me, I'm just going to go ahead and shoot you all the relevant documents that you'll need for whatever activity you're up to. Please make sure not to use any documents that you have saved on your computers, because we've been going through a big process of updating all of our forms. Actually, we're in the thick of it. And so if you have something that's saved on your computer, it's very likely that it's an old form and it's not going to be accepted through our accounting team. They're only going to be accepting the new forms. So in the interim, just reach out to me. I'll get you guys the new forms. That way you can do whatever you need to do. And I'm going to be getting them up on the Ability Tools site shortly. If you go to abilitytools.org, there is a device lending and demonstration center portion that you can go to be able to download forms, but they're not quite up to date yet. We're working on it.
Perfect, thanks. And for ILC staff that are looking to create an NATADS account, I know you said to reach out to you, but what information do you need from each staff to create that account?
Pretty basic information. First and last name, your position, your phone number, and your email. And once I have that, I will send your credentials to you, and you'll have a general NATADS password that I give to everybody. And so I suggest the very first thing you do when you get the email with your credentials from me is go straight to NATADS and enter a unique password to yourself. It's really that simple.
Perfect. So please go ahead and reach out to Katherine if you would like to get on NATADS and you don't have your own login. Vince wants to know, can the performance measures be answered by the consumer verbally? I don't know. I'm going to have to get back to you on that one. That's a good question. I would imagine so, but let me check. Let me find out for you, because in the COVID world, everything has kind of gotten topsy-turvy, hasn't it? But let me find out and I'll get back to you. Katherine, that's all I'm seeing for questions right now. All right, great. Thank you, everybody, for attending. I know this one was a lot longer than the others typically were. I knew we were going to get into lengthier territory when we started getting into state level functions. So thanks for hanging in there. And I hope that you learned something, and I hope that you reach out to me if you need any assistance with anything else in the future.